It was a dark and eerie night. The moon was barely visible through the thick branches of the towering trees that surrounded the winding road through the dense woods. A lone biker rode his motorcycle down the desolate road, the engine growling loudly as he sped down the twisting path. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the roar of the motorcycle's engine. Suddenly, the biker caught a glimpse of something moving on the side of the road. He slowed down, straining his eyes to see what it was, walking on the side of the road. It was an old lady, crooked, bent and walking slowly. The biker raced forward, overtaking the figure, but as he rode on, he saw the same old lady walking ahead of him. Looking at her again sent shivers down his spine. The biker now knew that something paranormal was going on. He was getting nervous, but he knew he had to keep going. The dense woods were getting thicker and darker as he rode on, and the biker couldn't shake the feeling of something lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, he caught sight of a white cloth swaying in the wind, hanging from a distant tree. As he got closer, he realized that it was not a cloth but a body, floating near the top branches on the tree. As he drove closer, he could see the head hinged to the body, eyes wide open and all white, staring at him as if it was alive. The biker watched in horror as the body floated above him, the head on the broken neck watching him too. The chilling sensation ran down his spine, and he felt his heart pounding in his chest. As the biker drove closer and from below the body, a gust of wind blew through the woods, and the body swayed violently, the branches creaking as if they were about to snap. The biker watched in fear as the body started to spin, round and round, as if it was being possessed by an evil force. The biker could feel the hairs on his neck standing on end, and he knew that he had to get out of there as fast as he could. He revved up his motorcycle, and the engine roared as he sped away from the ghastly sight. But the image of the floating body stayed with him, haunting him long after he had left the woods. As he drove away, the biker couldn't help but wonder what had happened in those woods. He knew that he had experienced something paranormal, something that he could not explain. And he knew that he would never forget that night, no matter how hard he tried. John had just started his university studies in a rural area, and he had rented a cabin with his friend near the campus. The place was isolated with only a few houses nearby. However, John's friend had to leave urgently and couldn't stay, leaving John alone in the cabin on his very first night there. John went to bed, turning off the lights and trying to get some rest. But in the middle of the night, he was awoken by a loud banging on the door and the walls. It sounded like many hands were hitting the cabin. John was terrified and couldn't see anything in the pitch-black darkness. He was too scared to even turn on the light. The banging continued, coming from all around, and John couldn't understand what was happening. Despite his fear, he tried to calm himself down, thinking that he would be better off sleeping through it. He tried to ignore the noises and went back to sleep. The next morning, John woke up, and he could still feel a sense of unease. He knew he couldn't stay in the cabin anymore, and he immediately packed his bags to move to another house. John thought he could finally get some peace in his new house, but he was wrong. The unexplainable banging sounds continued to haunt him every night, no matter where he stayed. John tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. The banging grew louder and more persistent every night, as if it was trying to get his attention. One night, John decided to investigate. He went outside to see if he could find the source of the noise. As he walked around, he saw a lady standing in the distance. It was a woman. She looked at John and said, "Come with me, come with me." She turned around and disappeared in the darkness. John hears a wailing slowly fading and sends shivers in him. John quickly hurried back in the house. From that night on, John was never alone. He always felt a presence around him, watching him from the shadows. He could hear whispers and footsteps even when he was alone in his room. John was convinced that he was being haunted by a vengeful spirit, but he didn't know why. Eventually, John had enough of the paranormal occurrences, and he decided to leave the area. He never found out what the source of the banging sounds was, or who the woman in the white dress was. But he knew that he couldn't explain what he had experienced, and it would stay with him forever as a haunting memory. It was a moonlit night, and the air was filled with silence. I was driving on an isolated rural road as the three figures emerged from the old abandoned house. I could see them at a distance in the landscape, walking towards the road. I was able to see their dark figure under moonlight. The barren landscape surrounding the road seemed to come to life as they approached. The trees swayed as if dancing to a tune unheard, and the grass rustled like whispers in the wind. As they came closer to road, they waved at me. I stopped my car. Their faces were etched with sorrow, and the pain of their loss seemed to radiate from them, filling the air with a sense of mourning. As they crossed the road, their footsteps made no sound, and the only noise was the rustling of their clothes in the wind. The few people who had witnessed them could hardly believe their eyes. Some claimed to have seen this ghostly family several nights in a row, while others swore that they had heard the sound of a car crash in the distance, followed by the screams of the victims. Rumors spread that the ghosts were searching for something, that they were unable to rest until they had found what they were looking for. But no one knew what that was. Many avoided the road at night, fearing the haunting sight of the ghostly family. Others, however, were drawn to the supernatural occurrence, unable to resist the urge to see the ghosts with their own eyes. And so, the three ghosts of the old husband, wife, and son continued to walk the lonely road at night, searching for whatever it was they were looking for, haunting those who dared to cross their path, and leaving behind a sense of sadness that lingered in the air long after they had disappeared into the darkness. The mystery surrounding their presence only added to the fear and fascination of the locals, who whispered about the ghostly sightings in hushed tones. Some claimed that the family had died tragically in a car accident on that very road, while others believed that they had been murdered in the old abandoned house nearby. But no one knew for sure, and the ghosts remained anonymous, their true identities a haunting mystery. As time passed, the sightings became less frequent, and eventually, the ghosts disappeared altogether. Some said that they had finally found what they were looking for and had moved on to the afterlife, while others believed that they had finally found peace and had been able to rest. Whatever the truth may be, the memory of the three ghostly figures walking the lonely road under the moonlight would remain etched in the minds of those who had witnessed their haunting presence. A reminder of the unknown mysteries that lurked in the darkness, waiting to be uncovered.